So in my last video I spoke about how I had ended my relationship to my husband and madly professed my love to this other man, and how unfortunately this completely freaked him out, but he said that he would like to remain friends. But then he stopped talking to me and withdrew his energy completely, so that he wasn't making any kind of contact with me. And this sort of plummeted me into the most like agonizing heartache that I think I've ever experienced in my life. And I thought that I would kind of just get over it, and that all the signs and synchronicities and everything that had been happening would just stop from there, and that he had fulfilled his purpose coming into my life, and now that was kind of going to be the end of all of that. But then, as it turned out, it actually really intensified, and the obsessive thinking that I also thought would die down just remained with me, and it actually felt like he had become like this omnipresence in my mind. And so I was in this state of just now completely questioning my own sanity, and I had been doing like energy psychology balances to release him. I had done cord cutting visualizations, just all sorts of work to try to release him.
I cast you out, unclean spirit!
Shut up, your ass!
In the name of our Lord Jesus! It is He who commands you! He who plunged heights of heaven to the depths of hell!
Fuck him!
Be gone!
But it just wasn't doing anything. And then during this time I decided to finally look up the twin flame phenomenon, because up until that point I had no idea what that was, and I'd never really cared, but something just sparked off some curiosity in me. It wasn't necessarily because I thought perhaps this was that, it was just a random spark of curiosity. And so once I looked it up, I was really blown away to find that this was an entire phenomenon with certain patterns, and that it just fitted exactly what I was experiencing. And so while I was still kind of experiencing a dark night of the soul, it also helped me see kind of the bigger picture, and I started to understand what was going on finally. But I also understood that it wasn't necessarily just going to be easy, that it's a process to just keep letting go of attachment and come back to practicing being in that state of just being, because the mind just takes over. That neurotic, reactive, hyperactive brain just keeps talking and talking and thinking and thinking and thinking and wanting and obsessing, and that is just intensified tenfold from what my mind had ever been like now that I'd met this guy. And that's just a reaction that occurs in this phenomenon, so that it kind of forces you into a place of suffering, so that the only way to escape that suffering is to learn to just let go and come into the now. And so it was a really rocky end to my pregnancy. The whole thing really had been really rocky. But while I'd had like a lot of difficult emotions, I'd also been completely like bathed in oxytocin and just had beautiful waves of calm and inner stillness wash over me because of all this beautiful contact from the divine. And so my baby was, the baby's due date was the 12th of December 2021. So 12th of the 12th 2021. But when I woke up on the 9th, I just felt really strongly that I would have the baby that day. And I was just in such a bizarre place. Like, I was so inward and just partially just trying to survive through all this this madness in my brain, and process all the emotions that had come up from everything that had been going on for the last few months or years even, and also just finding that inner stillness and just resting in that inner stillness. But it is like a battle. Your ego just wants to keep coming back with the thinking, and then questioning, you know, is am I going crazy, or is all of this real, all of these divine signs and synchronicities and messages? But that day in particular, I just felt like I really needed, I had a whole lot of emotions that I really needed to just allow to be there. I just needed to kind of release. And so to kind of aid me in that, I just put on that Ram Dass song, the piece of music with the Ram Dass speech on it, Sit Around the Fire, and I just put that on repeat. My poor children had to hear this also all day, but I just did nothing but focus on it and just cry and allow whatever needed to come up. And I didn't necessarily even know, I wasn't necessarily thinking about anything. There was just a whole lot of crying that I needed to do, and it wasn't, you know, like depressing. It wasn't like pity for myself. It was just this beautiful release. But of course, emotions about old mate Pete Murray did come up, and at one point I remember absolutely bawling my eyes out about the fact that he just hadn't contacted me for weeks and weeks, and I was just missing him so much. And then while I was crying about that, I just had this feeling wash over me, like as if I had just remembered the future. This feeling of relief, and like I just remembered something, but that I'd remembered something from the future. And it was that I just knew that once I'd had this baby and I put up the announcement to say that she was born, that I knew that he would make some sort of contact just to congratulate me or something, and that would kind of be the little bit of closure that I needed, just to feel like things went out on a good note. And so all during that day I was getting these little contractions like every 10 minutes, and at the time I just thought they were those Braxton Hicks contractions, because I've always had fairly strong Braxton Hicks contractions, and having had 2 babies before, I knew the difference between the sensation of just a Braxton Hicks contraction and like an early labour contraction. But I was noticing that they were every 10 minutes, which was a little bit strange, so I couldn't really tell if this could be labour or not. And I'd messaged my midwife, and she'd said, oh look, no, that doesn't sound like, it's probably just Braxton Hicks contractions. And she was actually down in the city, and she knows that I'd had fast births for the last couple of pregnancies. Both of my boys were just an hour 25-minute active labours, and I had met a few women who'd had a similar length first couple of labours, and then for the third they had 20-minute labours. And so I kept repeating that and kind of joking that I was probably going to have like a 20-minute labour. And my midwife said, oh look, I tend to find the third baby, things, they take a little bit longer. So I wasn't sure, but yet something kept telling me that it was going to be quick. And so I was a little bit worried to hear that on this day when I felt like I was going to have the baby, that she was down in the city, and just really hoping that she would make it in time if I did go into full-on labour. But yet nothing seemed to pick up until sort of right at the afternoon. I started to think, you know what, these are, I think these are a little bit stronger than Braxton Hicks contractions, but I just still wasn't quite sure. And then my husband or wasband came home, and the moment he walked in the door, it must have just affected my sort of feeling of like safety. Not that, you know, I don't feel safe around him, but not completely relaxed. And so when he walked in, it all just stopped. But then like after an hour or so, it kicked back in. But again, it was so subtle that I didn't think it was anything. And then we had dinner, and then my son wanted to make Play-Doh, purple Play-Doh. So I stood there making Play-Doh with him. And then as I was doing that, it started to just get to the point where I thought, you know what, I think this might just be early labour. But then again, it stopped. And so when I told my midwife this, she just said, look, yeah, that still doesn't sound like you're really going into labour. But maybe later tonight, when everybody has gone to sleep, you'll feel nice and safe and relaxed, and it'll start up. And so she thought that, you know, she'd be called sometime late that night. And then a bit later she messaged me just to say that she was heading home from the city, so that was really good. And then I went to have a bath, and then I was going to go to bed. But as I was getting into the bath, out of nowhere, these contractions just got really intense. And so I quickly grabbed my phone and started to message my midwife just to tell her. And she just kind of assumed that it couldn't be that far along because of everything else that I'd been describing so far. And so she said that I should just have my bath and go and get a few hours sleep just so I'm ready for later. But as I went to write back to her to say, look, actually they're that strong that I don't think I could possibly even sleep through this, all of a sudden it intensified even more. And it was actually really beautiful because I'd been listening to that Ram Dass track all day, and I just totally like embodied what he'd said about just going behind all the noise and to just go into the inner temple and just find that stillness and that silence. And so while my body felt like it was erupting, I was just really able to stay calm and still and just, yeah, access that place of being behind these intense waves. And I think that probably sped things up even more, because as I was typing out this message to my midwife, between having these really regular contractions, I was trying to tell her that the app on my phone had said, you're in active labour now, get to the hospital. And so I'd shouted out to my husband and the kids to start running the birth pool, and they popped on a Christmas movie, and expected that they probably watch that and then see what happened. Maybe we put on another movie after that. But they just started up this movie and just started filling up this birthing pool. And then as I'm writing this message, my pushing reflex already came in. And so I was bearing down, and I just thought, no, I don't want to have this baby in this uncomfortable bath. So I wanted to hop up and waddle out and get in the birthing pool, which, you know, had about this much water in it. And as I was just about to send the message, I pushed and my waters broke. And so I quickly typed that into the message and sent it. And so immediately my midwife writes back, okay, I'm on my way. And then, and she was only about 15 minutes away. And so I hopped out of the bath and started drying myself, and I thought, yep, I can make it out to the birthing pool. But I think maybe when I stood up, it also just help the baby come down further. And I felt like I was going to push again, and I quickly like put my knees together, and that actually opens up the birthing canal wider. So that was it. This baby had come down so low, and I felt that next push coming on, that next contraction, and I just looked around and I saw the toilet was there. So I sat down on the toilet and pushed, and I felt this baby almost come out. And then I thought, oh my goodness, no, I'm doing this too fast. And I thought, oh my gosh, like 15 minutes ago, I didn't even think I was in labour. And I thought, my cervix can't be out of the way yet. And I'd had this experience of my first birth where it was fast, and the midwives didn't believe I could possibly be as far along as I was. And this was in a hospital. And they told me to stop pushing, which it was my body's natural reflex. It's like telling somebody to stop vomiting. And so they told me that my cervix couldn't possibly be out of the way, and that if I continued to push, I would inflame it, and then I would end up in a very, very bad situation where my cervix was so inflamed it would prevent the baby from coming out, and then to be this dreadful emergency situation and all that nonsense. And so, but yet, unfortunately, that kind of stuck in my brain a bit. And I had done some neural rewiring stuff on this, and I think it helped so much, but there was just still a tiny fraction of it, just because it had happened so fast that I thought perhaps it had gone just literally too fast, that my body couldn't keep up. And so then I had this horrible moment where, just for a brief moment, I thought, oh my goodness, I've probably pushed too fast, that like I'm gonna have pushed on my cervix and that'll be all inflamed, and maybe I've like nothing's out of the way, and what if I have like this massive prolapse and all my internal organs fall out of me and then and get in the way and the baby can't come out. But then I felt another push coming on, so there was nothing I could do. And so I pushed this second push, and as I was pushing, I felt and I could feel the baby's head, and it came straight out, and I was like, whoa, okay, no, the cervix wasn't in the way, clearly, because there's my baby's head out already. And then I knew that I just needed one more tiny little push just to release the shoulders and bring the baby up. And I was a little bit, you know, wary that the baby might fall in the toilet. And then at this point, the baby's dad walked into the bathroom, and just to see if I was okay. And I said, I've just had the head. And then he freaked out and quickly put the camera down because I'd asked him to film it. And then he started running around in circles and told me that I had to get off the toilet because I couldn't have a baby on the toilet. And I was like, what would you know? And so I shouted out, go away, at him. And he did go away. And then I was like, oops, probably shouldn't have said that. I didn't actually think he would go away and just leave me here to have a baby completely by myself, with no one there, kind of just to check that, you know, things were okay. But it was fine. Like, I felt so completely confident that that I had this. And so he went away, left the woman to her privacy, and so I just had that tiny little small push, and I made sure I had my hands on the baby's shoulders, and then moved my hand up to baby's bum and just started to pull the baby up. But then I realised that the angle that I was on meant that poor old baby was getting their head stuck on the toilet seat. So I had to kind of stand up a little bit and move back just to let to give more room to clear the way. And then I brought Bubby up to me and just sat the baby on my lap, and just the baby started to cry. And hearing this, the baby's dad and my boys came running in to see what had happened, and my boys were just shocked. They were like, what? How is there a baby already? Because they hadn't even got through like the intro scenes of this Christmas movie, and they were thinking that it was going to be like a movie marathon for the night. And actually, just before they walked in, I had my little moment alone with the baby, and suddenly I just thought, oh, gotta check, what sex is it? And I had a look, and the umbilical cord was blocking the way, so I quickly moved it, and it was a vagina. It was a girl. So my little baby girl had to come like earthside. You know, I'd been so desperate to have her here in this physical realm. I'd been longing for her, but I'd realised that I had to let her go and let her make up her own mind. And she came to me. So it was just like this absolutely beautiful miracle. And also, again, because I had intuitively felt like I had a daughter out there who I needed to bring to earth, it was just more confirmation that my intuition is spot on, worthy of listening to, and that I know. And also just the fact that this beautiful baby girl came to earth and gave me this incredible opportunity to do something as powerful and primal and empowering as birthing her, and all by myself. She just brought me such a gift of just believing in myself like I never had before. Just, she allowed me to like step into my power. And so that birth really was just like completely transformative and so beautiful after everything that I'd gone through and been going through. So 5 minutes later, my beautiful midwife walked in, and I think she felt really bad because she hadn't, you know, been able to make many of my antenatal appointments or anything, and then to have missed the birth. But you know, very quickly I was able to say no. Like, it was just perfect. It just couldn't have been any more perfect. And I'm so glad that I got to do it like on my own. But then it was really beautiful to have her there afterwards, just to, you know, support me and make sure that, just take everything else into her hands and just let me relax, and just breathe in this beautiful baby girl. And so I hopped off the toilet and waddled through to the birth pool, which still only had, you know, this much water in it. And I hopped in because I still needed to birth the placenta. And that came out a short while later. And we had the Christmas tree on, and just my music playing, and it was really lovely actually. Even though I didn't have the baby in the birthing pool, it was really, really lovely to hop into that warm water and just relax. And then I hopped out a bit later and lay on the couch as she did all the checks and everything. And yeah, she was just this perfect little baby girl. And so then my midwife headed off home. She was absolutely exhausted. I don't think she'd slept in like 2 days, the poor thing. And I went back to my bed, and it was just so beautiful just having this little baby girl to myself. No one else was around. Everybody else was in their own beds off sleeping. And then that night I was lying there after feeding her, and she was sort of dozy, but I was just looking in her eyes, and I just thanked her for what a gift she'd given me. And I said to her, like, you've come to Earth at the craziest time, but I know you're here to do amazing things, and just to fulfill like a special purpose at this insane time of this like great ascension, and to teach me such important lessons. And already, like, she had fulfilled that. And it was so strange because as I was saying this to her, like just in my mind, I was like telepathically talking to her, but with so much intent, and all of a sudden her eyes just became so, like, she became so aware and so focused, and she looked so deeply into my eyes, and she started like babbling like a baby who was older, as if she really like intently had something to say to me. And I was pretty tired, but it felt surreal, and I sort of wondered if it was just because I was so tired, like was I imagining things? And then she said, in amongst her babbling, then she said, hey, and she started kind of going for the boob again. And I was like, did you just say hey? And then she went on the boob for a little bit, and then she came off and she started looking for it again, and she couldn't quite get it. And again she said to me, hey, and then is looking for this boob, and I was like, whoa, like prodigy child, holy shit, what are you? What little light being are you that is like speaking in English like 3 hours after you were born? And then she just went back to being this completely like sleepy, dozy newborn, and she didn't babble like that or become that kind of that aware, and like it didn't feel like she was trying to communicate again for, you know, 5 or 6 weeks or something. So that was an interesting experience. And I really, yeah, I do believe that she's one of probably many, many children coming into the world at the moment who are maybe what Dolores Cannon describes as like a wave of special volunteers. But yeah, it was pretty trippy. And so then a few days later, you know, after just having Bub settle in and everything, I put up my birth announcement, and sure enough, old mate Pete Murray, my twin flame, commented a sweet little thing to say, like that she was absolutely beautiful, which again I just thought was lovely for a bloke to say. And it felt so nice. It was just like, my baby girl's here, and he's made that last little bit of contact that just felt like it just gave me that kind of reassurance that everything's okay. You know, even if he's not going to be in my life, I didn't want to go out on that note of like him ghosting me. And then later that day, again I just had like music playing, and it was a shorter playlist this time of sort of more like soft music, but I had that Prosperous Speech on there again, just as a reminder that just to let him go, let him go, let him go. And so that song came on later, and again I just heard those lyrics. I must here be released by you, but release me from my bands with the help of your good hands. As you from your crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free. And I was like, yep, okay, time to let go. really, really time to let go now. But then, because the story keeps going, and you see, Kurt Johnson says that all these signs and synchronicities are probably like a creation of our own mind. It's not to say that they're not happening, it's just that our mind is a tool that we can use to manifest the things, I guess, from our imagination into like solid reality, solid particles. That we arrange the particles through that kind of vibration that we put out from our thoughts and feelings. And the ego wants to keep us completely involved in this story, and so it's going to keep creating the story. We're going to keep noticing the things that keep us hooked into that story, and we're going to keep creating them in the ego's attempt to keep itself in control. And so later that day, there was this page that I'd started to follow about twin flame sort of energy forecasts, but as of yet I hadn't actually really checked it out or anything, but this post came up, and I guess it was probably the first one that I'd noticed from that page, and it said that it was the energy forecast for that particular week. So this was it was the 13th of December that he had just finally reached out to congratulate me, and this energy forecast was from that day, the 13th, to the 19th, and so I clicked on it, and it's all to do with like the astrology of what's going on. And so it was titled The Return, and whatever astrologically was happening was meaning that a lot of twin flames were returning to being in contact or being together, and so again it was just another little strange thing where I was like, interesting that he spoke to me again for the first time in, you know, a couple of months, right when this energy forecast says that that's kind of collectively happening in the twin flame world. And so that just made me smile and just feel like gratitude and excitement for kind of what this wild ride was that was unfolding, and not clinging like I wanted the outcome of ending up together, but just kind of having this trust that it was working out sort of the way it needed to. And I was also, I'd been going through a lot of like you know, learning that I had to detach, but then I would just go too far and be like, okay, well that means that I just need to not care, and I just need to like repress my feelings and just like shut this out, shut down any thought. And through this whole thing, like I've just, it's a constant battle there, like when my ego gets in and goes, okay, you've got to be doing something, you've got to be you're not allowed to be thinking about this, then you're doing it wrong, but it's like, well, no, I just allow the thoughts and the emotions to come up, and it's not about repressing them, but it's also not about acting them out. It's just about observing and sitting with them and just allowing them, and not actually really doing anything other than just being aware of them, and just being really gentle on myself that I have a human mind, I have this crazy egoic mind, and it's okay. Like, it doesn't make me a bad person that that I've got all this obsessive thinking and all these insecurities coming out and all these anxieties. It's just like, just watch it all and just be gentle with yourself, forgive yourself. It's okay. And that you can only do what you can do and be in a state that you're ready to be in, I guess, at any given moment. And so, of course, my ego takes over. It doesn't want to die or be demoted. I think Kurt Johnson described this the twin flame journey as being, you know, the controlled demolition of your ego. But it's only that the ego thinks it's going to die, unless it's completely in control. But really, the ego is never going to go away. It's just that it's going to cause suffering and like unconsciousness, and reactivity and harm if it's left to be in control. They say the mind is a brilliant apprentice, but an absolutely dreadful master. So if we can come back to that state of just being, then it's kind of like spirit is guiding things rather than the egoic mind being in control of things and taking us wherever it chooses to go. Which, you know, it's trying to help, it's trying to keep us safe and comfortable, but generally it's not actually that helpful. But yeah, at this point I was still up and down, still thinking I was crazy, still going, oh my goodness, is this stuff really happening? And I was hooked into the story because it was crazy. I've never experienced something this crazy. I'm wanting to tell everybody, but also not knowing how to talk to anybody because I was just in such a strange place and I didn't think anybody would understand. But yeah, but seeing this this twin flame energy forecast, I thought, I wonder what the forecast then was. Like, if he just returned when the energy forecast said that that particular week they'd be like reconnecting, then I wonder what the energy forecast was for when like I first met him in the physical, and then also that time when I put out the call that if he was meant to be in my life that he would message me, and then he did message me. And I hadn't really thought about it up until that point, but I looked at the dates, and that week that I had met him when I was at this Psych K course, I had that crazy experience where I had like fallen head over heels in love with him on the 9th of August. And so the Lion's Gate, which is that kind of like the most intense, powerful like energy portal for manifesting, is on the 8th of the 8th. And so I realized that I had spent the 8th of the 8th with him, and that we'd actually been partnered up for to practice and learn one of these balances, which just happened to be the rapport balance, which I think is actually really significant to the twin flame journey, because on the level of the mind and the physical, there are times of separation and reunion, separation, and so the rapport balance is actually helping you not worry when somebody disconnects from you. So I'm sure that was like helping me along this journey. And so yeah, it had been the Lion's Gate that we'd spent together, and then I'd developed these crazy feelings, like the reaction had been catalyzed on the Lion's Gate of 2020. And then I looked at the date for when I had basically called him back in and he'd messaged me, and I realized he'd messaged me on the 9th of August. And so I hadn't realized at the time that it had been the Lion's Gate when I had just said, okay, universe, like, bring him to me if he's meant to be in my life. And so again, I went back and I looked at the energy forecasts for these time periods, and yeah, of course, like they were saying like these are extremely significant like cosmic portal kind of dates for all of this stuff. So again, it was just very magical and exciting and thrilling, but still bringing my egoic mind into a storyline. But I'm also at peace with that we're in this matrix, and we don't want this stuff to take over, but we can play in it. So I am very happy just to enjoy the unfolding of this magical story. And I still, you know, I could be entirely, like my egoic mind could be entirely creating this, but I still feel like it is this beautiful dance and communication with the divine, and just these beautiful little messages to let me know that I am on the right path, and I'm doing just fine. And I think, you know, it also, I don't necessarily think it's kind of like it's duality in action. I think it's actually showing me how to explain it. It's like, yeah, Brené Brown said once, the dark does not destroy the light, it defines it. It's our fear of the dark that casts our joy into the shadows. And so in some spiritual circles, it's almost as if there's this instruction that the ego is bad and we need to get rid of it. But the ego isn't bad, and it's just, it can actually sort of help show us exactly where we need to soften up and where we need to let go. Everything just plays off everything else. There isn't any good or bad or right or wrong way of doing anything. It can all just be used in like the path to awakening. Everything can be used, and we're just doing it in our own time. That's okay. It's like everything is just as it's meant to be. It's just that egoic mind's going to come in and try to take over again and tell us that it's not, but it is, and even that's fine. That's fine. We just slowly start to become more and more aware of that until we're kind of at this place where it just sort of calms down our reactivity. That voice will just keep talking and talking and talking. It'll never shut up, but that's okay. It's just, it's allowed to be there. And so I'd had my baby girl on the 9th of December, and then as it was getting closer to Christmas, I was sitting and listening to music, and it was such a beautiful time because I'd been struggling with so much chronic fatigue. Like I'd been working so hard on my health, and I'd reversed a whole lot of my sort of like chronic health conditions, but yet I couldn't shake my chronic fatigue, and it was like it was getting worse. And I kept thinking, no, I'm doing all the right things, I'm eating well and all of this, but I was kind of in denial about the fact that that I would have to change my relationship situation if I wanted to feel free and let go of that that burden that was exhausting me. And it's so clear to me now, like that was just my body telling me and showing me so clearly like where I needed to change my life. And so once I had ended this relationship, it just felt so good that it was done, and the kid's father seemed to actually be going okay. Like he was angry and he had a lot of resentment for me, but he hadn't broken down like I thought he would and just gone back to gambling or, you know, gone off and killed himself or anything. And because I was really set that we were going to do this gently and with goodwill, and just become like better friends and better co-parents, it meant that there was no kind of traumatic blow up where we had to split living situations or anything, and we were just kind of able to have enough space from one another, and still cohabitate and enjoy our children. So everything felt okay, but the burden of not having been able to end this relationship out of fear of what might have happened was gone. And so I felt like the most energy that I had felt in so many years, even though like I just had 9 months of pregnancy, which you know, it just absolutely tears through your minerals. Like, you use something like 1.5 kilos of mineral resources just to create a baby. And so, and then I was breastfeeding and being woken through the night and everything. And yet I felt like the best I have felt in a long time. And I was just dancing and enjoying life again. And it felt like there was just a spring in my step and sort of like more meaning in my life again. But yet it was still absolutely a roller coaster, because I was still going through the obsessive thinking and the anxieties that my ego would bring up. But yet overall, like, I just feel like I had more energy and vitality than I've had in a very long time. And so I was listening to music and dancing around the house every day with this beautiful baby and my 2 beautiful boys. And when I'd had my first baby, like, I couldn't even listen to music for like a year, because it was just sensory overload. Whereas this time it was like, it was energizing and fun and enjoyable. And so I had my music on shuffle again, as I do, and again that song Ready for Love came on again. And I was sitting there thinking again about how this had all played out, and how I had known that the kid's dad just wasn't the man for me, and that deep feeling that there was somebody else out there for me. And I was sitting there just scrolling on Facebook while breastfeeding the baby or something, and as I'm listening to this song and just thinking, contemplating that all again, for some reason I just noticed my profile picture on Facebook, which it's been up for like a decade or something, and I never think about it. It's just not even in my conscious awareness at all. Haven't thought about that photo for ages, and it just caught my attention like really strongly. And before I even had time to kind of think about why, I'd clicked on it and I was looking at it, and all of a sudden I remembered where it was taken. And it had been when I was staying at this, like these service department block type things, accommodation that happened to be called Quest. The name of the chain was Quest, and it was at my friend's hens weekend in a town called Psychoville, which is where my twin said he was from. And I remember that day so clearly, that the girls had they'd been being really bitchy and kind of cold and slack to me. Like they just kind of made me do everything and massage their feet and do the cooking and everything. And I was feeling really down, and I just went outside and I was kind of thinking about how I just didn't feel like I kind of fitted in with anybody or had a connection. I just felt really lonely, and I was looking out over these like soccer fields and just thinking to myself how I didn't even feel like I had a good connection with my karmic, who was soon to be my fiance. And as I was thinking that and just wondering if there was somebody out there more suited to me, this rainbow appeared in the sky. And at that point, one of my friends just came out. They were all dicking around, and she came out with the camera, and I turned around and I was a bit depressed. I didn't even smile, really. I was just in this deep inward kind of state, and she took this photo of me, and this rainbow is behind me, and baby's just woken up. But yeah, so seeing that photo after all of this had unfolded, it was one of the craziest synchronicities that had come up yet. And so going through all of this, I have had the words of Pema Chodron guiding me. In her book, Start Where You Are, that was one of the first things that sort of started my awakening many years ago. She starts off this book saying, "We already have everything we need. There is no need for self-improvement. All these trips that we lay on ourselves, the heavy-duty fearing that we're bad and hoping that we're good, the identities that we so dearly cling to, the rage, the jealousy, and the addictions of all kinds, never touch our basic wealth. They're like clouds that temporarily block the sun, but all the time, our warmth and our brilliance are right here. This is who we really are. We are one blink of an eye away from being fully awake. It's as if we were poor, homeless, hungry and cold, and although we didn't know it, right under the ground where we'd always slept was a pot of gold. That gold is like bodhicitta, which is the awakened heart, or sort of enlightenment mind. In other words, our confusion and misery come from not knowing that the gold is right here and from always looking for it somewhere else. When we talk about joy, enlightenment, waking up or awakening bodhicitta, all that means is that we know the gold is right here and we realize that it's been here all along. And so to find this picture that I had up as my main profile picture on Facebook that was taken where he grew up, so he would have been within, you know, a few kilometers radius of me at that moment, and there I was questioning if kind of like my other half was out there. And then to have gone through this whole journey where he catalyzes a reaction that sends my ego into overdrive, wanting desperately to be with him as if he is something out there, but yet there was the both of us at the end of the rainbow, because it is one soul, and that soul, that's the gold. We're not the ego, and we're not all the worrying that our ego creates. So that was like a very beautiful symbol that the universe brought me. And of course the fact that I was staying in an apartment block called Quest, and as the dictionary states, a quest is a long or arduous search for something. And what is the process of awakening? And what is the twin flame journey? It's a long and arduous search for something that we've had here all along, just because our ego tricked us into thinking that we were seeking something out there, but it was all in here all along. Anyway, I will continue telling my story of all the magic and the signs and the synchronicities, and all the stuff that this journey brought to conscious awareness for me. I will continue that in my next video, where I talk about some contact from spirits from the other side that I received. My sweet, I know that you feel weak, my sweet, but it's where you got to speak, my love. I know you've had it tough, my love. I know you've had workshop. We'll take your problems apart, put them back using our hearts. Get the earth working so hard to make your pain stop. I'm Santa's helper and I got your back. All my love is gift wrapped. Don't be scared, I'm by your side. I'm Santa's helper, bring your fears to me. I'll take them home, baby, and return them as sunshine. Sunshine. Yeah, I'll bring you sunshine. Working on them in the workshop. We'll take your problems apart, put them back using our hearts. Get the elves working so hard to make your pain stop. I'm Santa's helper and I got your back. All my love is gift wrapped. Don't be scared, I'm by your side. I'm Santa's helper, bring your fears to me. I'll take them home, baby, and return them as sunshine. Bring you sunshine. Yeah, I'll bring you sunshine. Psychoville.